Hello everyone. The purpose of this video is to teach how to create a mock API for your Next.js 13 app using only the server-side functionalities of Next.js without having to install any libraries or packages or using like another Node.js server like Express or something. And I will teach you how to create a front-end project which you can fetch the data from a JSON file like this, which is stored in your machine locally, and then all the CRUD operations are done uh, upon this JSON file here. So this is a mock restaurant. I use Tailwind to style it. It's just as an example. It is kind of responsive, though there are lots of things that could be improved. But as an example, it will work just fine. So this is the public page, which is a menu with categories and the dishes. And there is an administrator page where you can edit the dishes. For instance, you can go here. Instead of burger, you will say it's a delicious burger. You can change the price, you can change the categories, you can change the URL for the image. Once you save, it's already updated. If you go to the JSON file, you will see it has the new name here. And you can also create a new dish. For instance, there is a Persian dish called gourmet sabzi. Culture with your palater. That was over explain it. So here is the dish image. You just go on Google and you get any image. You paste it here. You say the price. It's 10.50. And as you can see, it's already here. And if you go to our public page, you will see the dish here. So you can also delete dishes. If you go here, there is a confirmation prompt just to make sure you won't delete by accident. And when you click delete, it deletes immediately. And you go on our public page, it's not here anymore. So this is all working with this JSON file locally. I don't have a database, and I'm using the Next.js server-side capabilities to create an API. So this API is defined here on the app directory. You need to create a folder called API, and here you can define subfolders which will be the roots. For instance, you have API dishes, and on the dishes folder you need to define a file root.ts or .js if you are using JavaScript. And here you define all your methods. So if I go to my API/dishes, you will get all the dishes from that JSON file. Okay, so now that I explained what is this mock project, I will teach you how to implement this thing right here. Okay, so in our menu component, we have these two methods, fetch dishes and fetch categories. And for now, they are fetching from our mocks. By the way, you can fetch directly a JSON file like this. If it's a get operation, you can just fetch directly the JSON file. But in Next.js 13, they should be inside the public folder. So in public, you can create a folder for your mocks, and then you can declare them there. Okay, so when you fetch directly from the mocks/dishes.json, you can still see this is on the admin page, but the same way we are fetching not from our API, we are fetching from the JSON file, and this works. But if you want to do post, patch, delete operations, then this is not enough. You need to have an API. And so I already deleted the API I had previously. I will code it with you step by step. But from as a starting point, we at least have our get method. I mean, we are fetching the dishes from the JSON file. But since we don't have our API anymore, when we try to add it or to delete, nothing will work. As you can see, I changed it, so when we try to edit something, delicious burger, I will change to burger. I will save, and I'm not doing anything. It's still, if I click cancel, it's still delicious burger. The only thing I'm doing is I'm printing the form data here with the new name, the new description. So this is the form data. That's the only thing I'm doing. I'm not posting it to, I'm not patching the entity anymore. And when I try to delete it, I'm just printing, you want to delete the dish with ID, and this is the dish ID. The same way, if you try to create a new dish, nothing will happen. It will just print the form data. So I want to create the API with you, and then we will change those methods to use the API. All right. So the first thing you need to do is in your app directory, you created a folder called API, and then you need to think of the routes you want to use. If you want to have a direct route to /API, then you can already define a route here. And if you define a function, a get method here, I will show you that this works. So return next response dot let's say JSON. I have message hello. I will save it, and now if we go to our API, you can see we got back the message. So this is how you define a get function. But we want a specific route. We want to have a route for our dishes, and then later we can have a route for our categories. So dishes, I will just paste this inside dishes. And now we are in the dishes route. If we go to API, we will see it doesn't exist anymore. But if we go to API/dishes, hello, we are in the dishes route. So, all right, this is the basic thing. How are we going to interact with our JSON file, which is here, our dishes.json, through this API? So basically, we will follow, for every method, we will follow a series of common steps. The first step, step 1, let me just zoom in so you can see the code better. So the first step is that we are going to read the JSON file as a string. We use util. This is, we need to do this. You will see it later. I'm not sure if I should say string or text as text. Okay. Step 2, we are going to, yeah, it's actually a string, to convert this text, this string, into a JSON object. In this case, it's a JSON array, right? So JSON array. Then you're going to manipulate the array, patching deleting items, posting, patching, deleting items. Then step 4, we are going to convert the JSON array back to string. Step 5, instead of say we are going, I will just say convert, manipulate, convert. Then once we have a string, once we have text, we can just write the file back. So write updated JSON array as text to the JSON file. So those are the steps we are going to follow on our patch, post, and delete methods, and it's a basic strategy you can apply later on when you're going to develop your mock API. So, but for the get method, it's way more simpler than this. So we are going to get dishes, right? So let's have here a const called dishes, and I want to use the file system promises to read a file. I just need to import file system promises here. File system promises from s/promises. Okay, and we also need path. And okay, for now this is only, it's what we need. So we have our dishes. We are going to await this promise, which is reading a file. This file is in a path, so we need the dishes file path. Dishes file path. We are going to use the path join method to find out the absolute path of this JSON file. So in this constant, we are storing the absolute path of this JSON file. It's the file we want to read. So here you can just say dishes file path, and you specify the encoding UTF-8. This is necessary, otherwise you will get an error when you try to parse it. I will show you. So now we have the text. The text, we want to convert it into a JSON array, right? So use json.parse dishes. And then we can return next response.json, and we pass our JSON. For the get method, this is all we need to do. We can treat the exceptions that this might cause, like we can surround this in a try catch block, but this, you will see that this works. I will save it, and I will go to api.dishes, and as you can see, we have all our dishes here. So this is the get method. As I said before, if you remove the encoding from this method, you get this error. Argument of type buffer is not assignable to parameter of type string. So you need to specify the encoding. And you can also surround this on a try catch block. And in here on error, I will say return next response function.json message and no dishes found. Instead of doing that, I can do this json.stringify. I will wrap it this. Is this right? Yep. And then here I will say status 404 headers content type application JSON. What I can do to make this better? Let's close this. Oh, I should say new. Turn new next response. Okay, this should work. So let's try to see if this works. If I specify a file that doesn't exist, this should return this error. So let's try. Yes, it works. So here I'm getting a 404 not found, no dishes found, because I'm trying to access a file that doesn't exist. So this try catch, you are going to fall on this exception. So this is our get method. It's ready, it's working. And now let's move on to the patch method. Okay, so export async function patch. And for our patch method, we need to have the body of the message with the fields we want to edit on our dish. So we need a request, which is of next request type. And I need to import this from next server. And now we are going to follow this series of steps. First, we are going to read the JSON file, and we are already doing this here, right? So step 1, read JSON file. All right, now step 2, parse it into a JSON array. And we already did the same thing here. By the way, perhaps we shouldn't be repeating this much code, but this is just for learning purpose, so there is no problem in repeating code if you are just learning. This is a learning exercise. Step 3, the structure values from request body. So our request body has an ID, a name, description, image, category, and price. And you use the await keyword here with your request.json. Basically, this will convert the body of your request into an object, which you can destructure like this. And now we have access to all the fields being sent in our patch request. Okay, now we need to move on to this part here to manipulate the array so we can update it with the patched dish, with the dish we just updated. To do that, we need to find what is the dish that we want to update. So find the dish index of the dish to be patched. Let's declare a constant called dish index. And here, just for clarity, I will say JSON array. So JSON array, we are going to use the find index method from, this is a method of JavaScript arrays. Basically, we need to say we are going to find a dish, and a dish is a type of dish props. I already defined this interface, just need to import it. Import dish props from types. And let me just show you what is this type here. On my types here, I have a file just for types, and it's defined like this. All the dishes, they have an ID, a name, description, image, price, and category. Those are the same fields we are destructuring from our request. So let's go back to our API code here. So I want to find this dish, and I want to use the ID because it's an unique identifier. And I want to say, I want to find the index of the dish, which has an ID equals to the ID of the request. So here on the body of the message, we are getting an ID, and from the dishes we have on our JSON file, we want to find the index of this dish whose ID is the same as the ID of our request. So once you have the dish index, you can find the dish. But first, let's make sure the dish exists. So step 4.1, if dish can't be found, return 404. If there is no dish with this ID, then the method findIndex will return -1. So if dish index is less than 0, we are going to return new next response. And here I want to say JSON stringify and here I will specify status and the headers. If you are a front-end developer and you don't know exactly what these status are or other HTTP status, I recommend you give it you do a small research. This means not found, and there are other important status that as a front-end developer you also should know, because it helps you to treat the exceptions you might be receiving from your backend. Okay, now we already have the index of the dish we want to edit. So let's say step 5, get desired dish, and we will say let desired dish is the dish in the array which has this index. And now we are going to patch, finally to edit, to patch our dish. So, but we want to do something extra here. Imagine the front end is updating just one field of the dish. It just wants to change the name or the description. So in the body of the request, all these values will be null or undefined except the ID and the field you want to patch. If you want to change the description, then you will have a body just with ID and description. So how can we do that? we want to patch this just with the values of the body that are not undefined or no. And we do that, it's quite simple actually. We say the desired dish.name it's equal to, we are asking here, is the name undefined? It's the name from the request, the body of the message. If there is no new name specified in the body of the message, we are going to keep the current name, otherwise we are going to update it. So if there is a name there, the new name will be equal to name, otherwise the old name will remain. And we are going to do the same for the other fields. So here it's description. Does the body of the message contains a description? If yes, we want to update the description. Otherwise, we will remain with the old description. The same with image. Just notice that this won't work with a Boolean attribute, because if you are updating a Boolean attribute and you are updating it to false, this evaluation will say it's false. So if this value is false, the name the attribute you will get is the second one. So this kind of checking won't work for Boolean values, but for strings it works just fine. For numbers as well. Just it doesn't work with numbers. You need to do other kinds of checking. All right, we have our image, our new image. We need also category and price. Category, is there a new category? If there is, we update it, otherwise we remain with the old one. Is there a new price? If there is a new price, we update it, otherwise we keep the old price. Alright, now the desired dish is edited as we wanted. We want to update the JSON array now. And it's very simple. You just say that this item located in the array with this index, it's equals to the desired dish, because desired dish was already updated. Step 8. We are going to convert the JSON array back to a JSON string. So we say const update data JSON stringify JSON array. Now finally we can update the JSON file. Since we already have this text here with the updated data, we can just write it on our file. So write the updated data to the JSON file. And we are going to use again file system promises here. Write file, dishes file path, and we are going to update the file located in this path, and we are going to write this text on this file. And now we just need to return our response. Step 10, return response to front end, which now it's at 200. Okay. Return new next response JSON stringify message dish patched successfully. let's set our status and headers. Okay, that's it. That's our patch method. Now let's see if this works. I have a component called editable, sorry, editable dish, and editable dish has a form, um, which has here, if the dish is being added, then I'm rendering this form, and when it's submitted, I'm calling this handle submit method, and the handle submit method for now is just logging the form data. And now I will uncomment this code here, which is actually using our mock API. So I will uncomment it, and here I'm defining my request. It's a patch request. This is the body of the message. It has all the fields of the dish. This is just to manage my loading state while the fetch is being made. So here I'm actually patching, making the patch. If the response is not okay, I will console log an error. By the way, here I should use console error, but anyway. Otherwise, we are going to finish the editing process, and we are going to fetch the dishes again so that we have the updated data rendered in our page. So let's just see if the root here is correct. Yes, API/dishes, that's our root for our API, because we defined this root inside the dishes folder. This is how the app router architecture works in Next.js 13. So let's execute our app to see if our patch is working. Let's try to edit this. Instead of delicious burger, just burger. Processing. Yes, it works. So we go to our public page. You can see that the title has changed. Okay, now we have our patch method. We need to create our post method so that we can create new dishes, and the delete method so we can delete dishes. Here on the create dish form, it's a component where I'm tracking the state of all the fields from the form, and I have this handle submit method, and right now it's just logging the fields. So if I do anything here like this, and I open developer tools and I click on create, as you can see, it's printing correctly the values entered in the form, so we know that this is working. The status are being handled correctly. The input values are available for us to make the post request. So let's go to our API code, and below our patch function, let's create our post root. This accept a next request the same way as before, as we did in the patch method. Oh, and by the way, I forgot something here. When we are trying to read the file or to parse it, we could have some kind of error. Imagine if the file doesn't exist, or if this file, it's a text file which does not conform to the JSON format. So we are going to have an exception when you try to parse it. So the right way to do it is to treat these exceptions. So we need to surround this in try catch blocks. We could have a try catch for this and another one for this one, but I will just catch everything. So if we have an error, it could be either from this line or this one. I will get all the steps here. I'll paste inside my try, and then I will catch, and I already have an error message here, but instead of 404 I want to return 500, which means internal server error. So error reading the JSON file, reading or parsing, reading or parsing the JSON file. Okay, now that we did this, let's do our post request. So the same way, we need to read the JSON file, convert the string, the text, into a JSON array, and then we will manipulate this array. So we already did this here. It's the same thing. And we will also need the fields from the form. When the person is creating a dish, she will post a request with these values on the body of the message. So we need to do exactly the same thing here. So we can just copy all of this. We just need to close here the try. We need to catch an error. And let's return the same thing here. We had an error reading or parsing the JSON file. Okay, so now that we have the information for the new dish, we just don't have the ID yet, because the ID is generated by the server. So we need to do that. We need to, step 4, generate the ID for the new dish. So to generate the ID for the new dish, we are going to use a native module, a native Node.js module, which is crypto. So we need to import it like this. You don't need to install anything. And here we want to generate an UUID, universally unique identifier, and this is a 128-bit label used to identify entities. It's very common, and we want to generate a random one for our dish. The way I managed to make this work using crypto is like this. You call the method random bytes. We want 16 bytes, and a byte has 8 bits, right? If you have 16 times 8, you will get exactly 128 bits. So we have 16 random bytes, but we want to represent them in a hexadecimal form. So this will generate a random UUID. After we have an ID, we want to post the dish to our JSON array. So add the new dish to the JSON array. By the way, before you do that, you could make some kind of validation. You could validate the name if the name is not null, if it has a specific length, a minimum length. You could validate the image, the price, etc. So I will just push this dish to our JSON array, but before you do this, you could do all sort of validations, and that applies to the patch as well. I'm not doing any kind of validation here, but you could do it. This is a mock API. It's not that important to have validation, but you could do it. This could be a good thing to simulate the real responses from a real API, which if you post something that shouldn't, that has an incorrect format, you should receive an error, and your front end must be prepared to deal with those errors. Okay, so JSON array.push, and we want to push an object which has all these fields here, but not only this, also the ID that we just generated. So those come from the form, from the front end, and the ID is being generated in our server. Okay, that's enough to put our dish inside the array. And now we are going to convert the JSON array back to a string. So convert JSON array back to string. Const update data JSON stringify JSON array. Step 7. Write the update data to the JSON file. Now that we have this text, we can write it on our file. We are going to use file system promises as we did before. Write file, dishes file path, updated data. And now we finished the post method. We just need to return and when you create something in the database, which is the result of this post, you should return 201, which is the status code for created. So let's return new next response. I'm doing basically the same thing I did before. I will just say dish created successfully, and then we need to pass the status and the headers, which is a JSON. Alright, this is our post method. It should work. Let's save it. Now in our dish form component, when we submit the form, we want to post it to our API. I will uncomment this code. So basically here I'm declaring the request options. It's a post. I'm sending a JSON object. This is the body of the message with all the fields from the form. Here I'm just handling the loading process, and then after you get a response from the API, after you make the post request and you receive the response, if the response is not okay, this is where you should handle the error. Otherwise, I'm just collapsing the form we already created. We don't need the form anymore, so the create mode I'm setting to false, and I'm fetching the dishes again, so I have an updated list of dishes with the dish that we just created. And here I'm resetting the form fields. So let's see if this works. I'm here on my admin page, create new dish, and let's say gourmet sabzi. I'll just write anything here. Main course, the URL is this one. $10 or euros, and it's here, it's working. Okay, so let's go to our public page. As you can see, it's here. Now we only need to implement our delete method. We want to be able to delete a dish. And the delete is easier than the patch and the post, since we don't need to treat the form values. Let's go to our root TS file or API. Receives a next request as parameter, just as the other methods. Oh, I'm declaring it inside the other function. Okay. Alright, so in this case, the first thing we need is the ID of the dish. So we want to know what is the dish that we want to delete. And this is coming from the body of the message. So I will destructure the request like this, wait, rec.json. And then we need to do the same thing we did here. Read the JSON file, parse it into an array. This is step 2 and 3. Now we need to find, in this array, we need to find the dish with the corresponding ID. And we already did that, if you remember, on the batch method, like this. So this logic is the same. Find the dish index. You are here finding the dish whose ID is equal to ID, the ID that came from the body of the message. The dish cannot be found, we are returning 404. Otherwise, we are going to remove the dish from the array. And we are going to use the splice array method. Okay, so we just need to specify the index, and we want to remove just one item, only one dish. Now we need to convert the JSON array back to a JSON string. We already did that. Here it's the same thing. And now we need to write the updated data to the JSON file, which is the same thing again. 5, 6, 7. And after we did that, we can return our next response. Like, of course that you can always copy and paste code. Sometimes it's good to write code, even if you did it before, because when you are writing, you are memorizing, you are practicing, and later you will easily remember things. If you wrote them over and over again, probably you will be able to remember them more easily. Alright, so this is our delete method. The only thing that I forgot to do is to have a try catch, because we could have problems here reading or parsing. So everything here I will paste inside the try. Then here I will catch. And just return this. save it. Now let's go to our editable dish component. Here on an editable dish we have, let me just show you, I have a button somewhere where you can delete. Here we have this button, delete, and when you click on it you are executing show delete prompt. And show delete prompt, it's going to set this the state of this variable, this constant, to visible, to true. So this is going to show the prompt, and the prompt has another button which we'll call the delete dish method. So this is actually the method that is making the delete request. And I will comment this out. This is the request logic. As we did before, we are just specifying the options of the request here. And as the body of the message, we are just passing the ID of the dish. And okay, let's save it. And now we should be able to delete this dish. Let's see if it works. Yes, it works. So that's it for today. All the code is available in this repository that I will share in the description. And I hope you liked the video. I hope you learned something. For an exercise, if you want, you can create the API, the root for the categories. So you could create another folder here, categories, and you could create a root.ts file inside the categories and create all the methods so you can post, edit, delete, and get all the categories. The categories are defined here. They basically have an ID, a name, and a priority. This priority means what category is going to be shown first on our public page. So if you go here, you will see first we are showing the appetizer, later the salads, then the main course, and this is defined by the priority field. So you could make a patch request that changes the priority of the categories and or the name. The ID shouldn't change. The ID should remain the same always. And also you should be able to create new categories. So you would also need to create the interface for that. Here on admin, there is a page categories, which is now empty. So you would need to create the forms and all the interface to do those requests too. You can do that as an exercise if you want. If you like the video, please like it and subscribe. It really helps me. Thank you.